Ladies and gentlemen, when I'm looking around, I see that we have somehow equality in the room. And that is exactly how I perceive the way we should work. One cannot leave the question of equality for men and women solely in the hands of women. It is a joint venture between the female and the male side of our society. And that is why, ladies, you permit, I would like to say a very warm welcome to the gentlemen who are in this room. For me, it is a very great moment. Finally, Madame, we tried already several times before to be in this place and to visit my institute. As you know, the idea for a gender institute goes back to the year 2000, when the European Council recommended setting up such an agency dedicated to the work on equality between men and women. And here we are, a decade later, a lot of discussions, a lot of fights, a lot of preparatory work, a lot of decisions have gone into this, and now the Institute will start to work. Now, I do believe that Vilnius is a very good choice. First, when I look into history, I record that already in the 16th century, women's right to inherit, to attend meetings, was confirmed on the first Lithuanian statute, which even included a chapter of protecting women against violence. You see, 16th century. Now we are in 21st and we start to work on it. Yeah. At a time in most of Europe, women were in very difficult positions. Lithuania was taking the lead. And in 1905, in the great parliament of the city of Vilnius, well, the women were included, and the principle of equality was acknowledged. And this leadership has continued until today. The employment rate here is above the European average. And when I look, you have a female head of state, you have a female president of a parliament, a female minister of finance. Now women in decision-making are doing well in this country, I must say. And so it's very good that the agency is in Vilnius. The Institute's task is to support the European institutions, the European member states, in their efforts to promote gender equality. And this task is to do that in an objective, reliable, comparable collection of data, collection of information, in order to do several things. In order first to have the visibilities of fact and figures. Because if you want to build policies on having heard something, that's not sound decision-making. So we really need this consultation in research, in publications, in programs, in best practices, this exchange, in order to build on this our policy making. So what I wish, Madam, is that I don't need to care for this anymore, because it is simply done in a solid way, and we policymakers can just take what is coming from you, make our political decision, and there it is. So this working together, you to give us the data, the elements which we need in order to avoid errors, in order to go to the right direction, and then to make these evidence-based policy decisions. That is where we really will make the difference in this coalition working. I know that today the day-per-day management of the Institute is in a very safe hands of Madame Virginia Langbach and her team. So also about that I don't need to care. Very good. I can then turn to the political messages. And here my message is there is a lot to do, because gender inequalities, unfortunately, remain very high in Europe. I have started with this policy making 30 years ago when I was in the Luxembourgian Parliament. And I must say, sorry, but the problems are still the same. So we have to accelerate the pace a little, I believe. And that is also the reason why I had asked from the President of the Commission, who was enthusiastic about this, to have the 27 commissioners in the beginning of this commission to sign a charter for women's rights. Because women's rights is not only with me, it's with the 26 other commissioners as well, in all their policies. And it was the first time that each commissioner pledged to take equality on board. And out of this women's charter, the strategy for equality between men and women was built. You know that gender equality is a fundamental right. It is one of Europeans' founding principles. It goes back to 1957 with the Treaty of Rome, and now in the Treaty of Lisbon, it has been reinforced. We have also made a lot of progress. I mean, one should not say nothing has happened. What has happened, and I think from the scientific point of view that is interesting. Normally, the laws in the member states have been brought together, and out of this was created European law, directive. For women affairs, it was the other way around. There were no laws in the member states, and the first directives in the 70s have been created in a vacuum. So here, for women's rights, we started with European law, which then created a shift of mentality and basic national law, which didn't exist before. It's very interesting because sometimes this is forgotten. I think it has to be reminded sometimes that here was a complete different way of lawmaking than in other questions. Now, we have come a long way, maybe, as it is written in some advertisement. The results are visible. Much progress has been made in getting more women into the workforce. The average now is close to 60% women in the workforce. That is up from 52% 10 years ago. And you know that in the Europe 2020 strategy, Europe aims for 75% of in workforce. Now this is only possible, not through men, sorry, because you are already working a lot and in one place, outside the home, because that's another story, what we are doing inside the home. But the only way to arrive at a workforce of 75% in Europe is to have the untapped potential of women coming in. Here, Europe needs women's talents. They are problem solvers and very good in multitasking. I'm always wondering why managers do not utilize this multitasking capacity of women. extraordinarily efficient, I must tell you. That could solve a lot of economic problems. But you should not leave, you gentlemen, the ladies doing only the multitasking at home, because when both work, also both should be responsible for raising children and caring for homework. Now, last September, the Commission put on the table the gender equality strategy for promoting equality between men and women. You have certainly all read it. Let me then give you some examples. I gave you already the example of work. Work does not only mean at the lowest level, it means also at the top level. There I was shocked that in the last decades, company boardrooms have continued to be dull gray. And only 1 out of 10 board members of the largest publicly listed companies is a woman. Only 3% of the presidents of the board are women, and here we should do better. I think that the companies can do it by themselves if they really do want to do it. I give you one example. Deutsche Telekom has decided to have management structures which are much more female. Well, I will discuss in March next year with the CEOs of the largest publicly listed companies in the EU and see if they are willing to have targets in their companies. As a target, I would suggest, for instance, 30% of board members by 2015 and 40% of board members by 2020. Now, because I'm not a fan of quotas, I would prefer voluntary measures and self-regulation. If that doesn't work as a last resort, I will certainly go to targeted initiatives at EU level. The second problem, although we have these very old directives on equal pay for equal work, we still see that women continue to earn an average less 18% than men across the EU. That is an average. Huh? And that is why I think we should put that on the agenda and raise awareness. In Germany, they have had a very good exercise, the Equal Pay Day, where you measure, where you put on a public place a meter, and the meter shows how much longer a woman has to work in order to reach the same salary as a man, in order to make awareness raising. I would like to make this Equal Pay Day a European Equal Pay Day to be held each year in order to increase the awareness. And also negotiate with the social partners. I believe social partners have a big role to play into this in order to get more transparency into the pay systems. No, I don't want to publish the pay of every single European. That is not at all what I want to do. But the groups of income in categories should be put to the public. And I think that is something we can do very efficiently together with the worker unions and with the employers.